All right, Dr. Shawn Baker, welcome to the Bucket List Life podcast, mate. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. I'm doing enjoying life, and things are going pretty good.
Oh, excellent. Now, whereabouts are you in the world?
So I'm in Southern California, in Orange County, in a town called Laguna Hills.
Fantastic, fantastic. And look, right off the bat, how does it feel? How does it feel being the poster boy for veganism's, veganism all around the world?
Oh well,
Not,
yeah. I
not.
mean, to be maybe the antichrist for veganism. No, I obviously get a lot of criticism from vegans, and it's not. Most of it I take with a grain of salt. I don't really take much of it to heart. I realize that many of those people won't be vegans in a year or 3 years anyway, and it's kind of just a bunch of silliness. So
Yeah, right,
I'm
right.
I'm
And
fine with
honestly, do you get a lot of a lot of haters?
yeah, they come in waves. It seems like you have the ones that come around and then they get tired, and because I'm on social media, and so they come on my social media and kind of spam my social media and
Yeah.
try to convince everybody that's sort of following me and thriving and doing well eating meat that they're not. And it's just kind of like a futile effort. And I see it kind of their desperation, and then they just kind of fall off after a few months. They wear out, and or they become so aggressive and obnoxious, I just get rid of them and I just block them. So it's more for entertainment value than anything else. Kind of have a couple of them around, and but yeah, they don't last that long.
Yeah, I imagine you're not a guy that really gives a shit about criticism too much, and I really appreciate that. And look, I've got to number one, mate, thank you for two reasons. One, for changing my changing my life, changing my dietary habits, and we'll go into the effects of that. And but two, like I was just saying off camera, thanks for being a great example. How old are you?
I'm 53.
53. So I'm 47 now, and I was just saying off camera that when you get to a certain age, or maybe this is just my stuff, but you get to a certain age, you look towards other examples. As a guy to guy, you're sort of looking at examples ahead of you of how guys are holding it together. Like how they're being healthy, and I think that's something that doesn't. It's maybe not in vogue. It's maybe not you know, insta friendly. But I personally, I've been in the health and fitness industry. I was in the health and fitness industry with a chain of personal fitness training studios for over 20 years. So that was a large part of my identity. And having done, me and my team, having done over 2 million personal training sessions, and helping tens of thousands of clients around Australia, I've always been interested, as an exercise physiologist as well, always been interested in the example in longevity, the example in other people. And the great thing about social media is you can find people like yourself. And so you've been a real inspiration. And what the other day you did like 1,000 push-ups. What's that challenge going on? I saw.
Well, I mean, it was kind of funny. I just kind of woke up that morning, and I do a lot of this stuff spur of the moment. I didn't plan for it. And I was like, I don't really want to exercise that much today. I mean, I didn't want to do a real hard workout. And for me, push-ups is not that big of a deal. It's not a lot taxing. So I said, well, the most I'd done in a day was 5. And I said, well, let's just do 1,000 today. It was kind of my recovery day. And I said, well, I'll just knock out 1,000. So I just kind of did sets of
It's a
50.
recovery day.
Well, I mean, it was. I mean, it was kind of, like I said, I was kind of, it was, like a lot of times I'm doing really hard rowing sessions or really hard conditioning sessions. And like some days, like on the weekends, I'll kind of slack a little bit. And so
Yep.
that was kind of my day to do that. But surprisingly, I wasn't sore at all. I mean, I was doing push-ups. In fact, I did that Saturday. I was doing them again on Monday, and Sunday I think I got on that little Airdyne bike and went 1,000 calories in under an hour, which is and I'm not a cyclist at all, but I mean, it was like 250 watts, held that for an hour.
As a cyclist, that's enough.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I probably could have gone a bit further if I wanted to, but I was just like, yeah, just see if I try, because that's the longest I've done. I'm just kind of interested to see what my body's capable of. And a lot of times I'll just say, well, let's see if we can do this today. And some things I have a frame of reference, other things I have no idea. Some things I get out there and I get myself into trouble because I'm like, I'm going to do this, and then I do it regardless of how much it sucks. And the push-ups wasn't too bad. I mean, I made the mistake. I did 800 before dinner, and then I had 200 to do after dinner, after my big meal. And that was when I was kind of got to like, these
Yeah,
last 200, just kind of getting those done with a big full belly full of food. But yeah, it's
yeah.
I don't have a like I said, I've got some goals in mind, but generally it's just do stuff, just kind of see what your body's able to do.
Just keep moving, yeah. And like I'll circle back to that. I've got so many questions for you, and thanks so much for your time as well. I know that what you're doing and what you stand for is growing in popularity. Would you say that that's a safe assumption?
Yeah, I would say it's a safe assumption.
Yeah.
And again, what I stand for is results. I'm not particularly dogmatic. I mean, obviously I pursue a meat-based diet or carnivorous diet, but
Yeah.
I don't tell people that's the only way you can do it. I don't tell people to do it exactly my way. I tell people that be dogmatic about getting results and make the changes. Now, for many people, what I do works well for them as well. But I try to, sort of walk the walk. I'm like, look, this is what I do, and these are the results I get, and I'm not sitting there talking about it. I'm actually doing it, performing it. And the results are results, and you can it's hard to argue with results, is what I would always say.
The first time I got exposed to your work and yourself was a friend of mine who had just met. I invited him to my house for the first time, and he came down and he said, "Oh, I'll bring some lunch," and I'm like, all right, cool. And he goes, have you got a barbecue? And I said, yeah, we've got a barbecue. Come on down, man. And I thought we were going to go out and have a coffee and have some lunch and this sort of thing. And I didn't really, give it much space. And he came down with meat patties, sausages, and caviar. And I'm like, his girlfriend's Russian, and she brought over some Russian caviar. And I'm like, this is a bit strange, and he's like, well, let's fire up the barbie. And I've got this fat, like it's meat fat, and we're going to put that all over these meat patties and fire up the barbie and let's cook it. I'm like, this is super strange for a kind of a first date. And so we cooked up this massive feast, and I'm going, dude, what's going on here? And he goes, yeah, I'm carnivore. And I'm like, what the fuck? What the fuck is that? And he's like, I only eat meat. And me and my girlfriend, both in great shape, we only eat meat. I'm like, only eat meat? Bullshit. And he's like, yeah, look, I'll cook it up. Let's just cook it up. We had a massive feast, and we didn't eat for afterward. We didn't eat for ages afterwards. And right through the whole cooking process, I'm like, really, you want it? Like, there's already fat in the hamburgers, and you're putting more on it. Like, how does this goes against what I'm trained and what we're told. So what's the go? And he's like, well, you need to, can you send me some information? Because I'm always inquiring. And he sent me MidRx. He sent me your stuff on Joe Rogan as well. How many times have you been on Joe Rogan now? Is it once or twice? Or
no, just once. I think I'll be going back on there later this year. I think based on when some things get done. But yeah, so once so far, yeah.
Yeah, how's Joe, by the way?
Well, I mean, I don't talk to him that all the time. I mean, he sends me some stuff periodically. About every month or two, I hear from him. I mean, last I heard, he was doing well. I think he's still, his plan was to go carnivore and have a cheat meal here and there, and I think that's what he's been doing. So I haven't heard different from him, but he definitely, after actually doing it, after kind of contemplating about it for 2 years or so after I was on there, 2-3 years, and finally got enough sort of heard from enough people that he was going to give it a try. And, obviously he had just a real fantastic result from his, at least trial at it. So I think he's much more friendly towards it now than he was a year or two ago.
And is he sort of regularly checking in with you or anything like that? Are you making him accountable to it, or you don't have to?
Well, no, I mean, obviously Joe is obviously a hugely busy person. I don't have his number on speed dial. I mean, he will send me stuff on social media and ask me about stuff, and and I will sometimes send him stuff and he'll respond. Sometimes he doesn't. I can't imagine, with as many followers, he even I mean, just keeping up with what I have, and it's, you know, fraction of what he has. I can't even keep up with all the comments. So I'm just like, if I send him something, I think there's about a 30% chance he's going to actually even see it.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, he's been very good about, you know, sort of keeping a rapport going with me, but by no means am I like a close confidant of Joe's. I mean, I think I've influenced him obviously to some degree, as have some other people with regard to diet.
After I watched that interview, and then I dug into your stuff. Myself and my partner just tried it on. You know, like we've been sort of pretty much keto, and then we went all meat, and we did it for our, you know. We'll dig into the reasons, your personal reasons, but for our reasons, it was like, all right, well, a number of different things. You know, I've got autoimmune, I've got asthma, I grew up with eczema. There's highs and lows throughout my day, and I'm running a couple of big businesses, and I wanted to steady out those moods. I wanted to make sure that I'm healthy and I'm recovering, and I'm you know, recovering from injuries as well. There's a whole host of different, you know, but mentally, I'd heard through, whether it be your stuff or from what my mate was saying, that the clarity, mate, the clarity has been next level for us. And my partner has got a whole heap of different results as a result of this. And obviously there's weight loss or fat loss, should I say. We're into ketosis a lot more. And for you, why did you start this journey?
Well, I mean, strictly for health. I mean, it was strictly, and a lot of it had to do with athletic performance. I mean, the journey that I'm on, and I'm still, you know, adjusting and adapting and changing as time goes by. You know, really from a dietary standpoint, started a little over a decade ago as I got into my early 40s and started to see, despite the fact that I was still performing very well as an athlete, as a high-level athlete, and training extremely hard, that I saw my health start to decline, and I started to make these nutritional adjustments that I thought, well, this is, you know, at some point you can't just eat whatever you want and work out and expect to not bear the consequence of that. So as I went through the sort of journey, I just sort of made this sort of natural trend toward a lower carb approach, a ketogenic approach, and then started just serendipitously found that this group of people that were eating only meat, and I literally observed them for over a year, reading their stories, looking at stuff, checking some of the stuff they saw, looking at some of the research, looking at some of the historical accounts, and you know, whether it's just cultural or athletic accounts. And then I said, well, I'm just going to try it just to see. And I would do a little bit here and there. I do a couple days here and there. I do a week of steak and eggs and go back to a regular diet in 2 weeks. And it eventually turned into a month. And once I did the month-long trial and I felt really, really good, then I said, well, this is an interesting 1 month experiment. Went back to a more omnivorous diet, and immediately within that day saw that I didn't feel as good. I mean, I had achy joints, and digestion wasn't good, energy wasn't good, mood wasn't as good, just didn't feel, I felt off. And so I went back to the kind of the meat only diet, and I've been, you know, basically now going on well over 3.5 years now of this.
Wow.
And so
it's
just what it is. And I continue to perform well. I mean, right now, I mean, honestly, 53, I can honestly say I'm probably in the best shape of my life. And I mean, you know, I mean, from a body composition standpoint, and arguably from a performance standpoint, which is not something most 53-year-olds get to say.
And you're not just a guy who, you know, who has stumbled across this meat, you know, carnivore diet. How long have you been you know, when did you graduate medical school and become a doctor?
Yeah, so 20 years ago was when I officially graduated medical school. I mean, it's kind of interesting. I started a little earlier, and left to go play rugby. I'd started medical school out of college and left to go live in New Zealand to play rugby for a while. And so I actually quit medical school to play rugby, and I did that for about 7 years. And in that span, I joined the military and was launching nuclear weapons and playing rugby for the military. And then finally, when I was about 30, I got tired of getting my head kicked in at the bottom of
I was about to say, who in their right mind goes and plays against All Blacks, mate? That's
well, I mean, that's where there was in the competition. Yeah, I mean, I got down to playing some of the Premier Leagues in New Zealand as an American recruit, and got to get on the pitch with some All Blacks, which was kind of a,
wow.
I didn't because I'd only been playing for about 2 years at that point, so I really didn't understand the gravity of that. As how much how incredible of athletes and rugby players they were, but
yeah.
So I mean, I just kind of had this sort of circuitous route. I've taken the different road in many different cases, and then so I went back into medical school, finished up, went to my orthopedic surgery residency. That was done and paid for by the military. So then I had to go spend about 5 years in the military as a military surgeon, and then during that time I was sent to a place like Afghanistan, where I took care of just these horrific war casualties, and did that, and that was something I did, and then I kind of
and on that, like how heavy, that got pretty heavy, yeah. You're right in.
Yeah. I mean, it was very intense. It was every single day was nonstop, horrific injuries, trauma, suffering. It was some of the worst things you can possibly see people go through. And that was all day, every day. For the entire time I was there for about 6 months, and it was a horrific experience for that. But I mean, at the same time, it was a very educational experience. And it taught you to be very resourceful and to be able to deal with extreme stressful situations and hopefully come out of it, a little better than you came into it.
How does that, and you'd imagine that a lot of people in that situation, I guess, post-traumatic stress disorder and these sorts of things, that has any of that, had any of those experiences had any kind of flow-on effect into your later years?
I don't really say I've got anything like any kind of problem. The only thing I've noticed, and I don't know if it's just, sort of coincidental, is now, like if I watch a show or see somebody fall and get hurt, I just physically don't like it. I mean, it's like, if somebody falls and crashes their skateboard or jumps in a building and they land, it just gives me like a 1 second jolt. And I didn't have that before. And I just don't know if that's related to that or if that's just totally something that's later in life.
Yeah.
But no, really. I mean, it's not like I don't I sleep fine. I interact fine. I don't have any. Yeah. My emotions are calm. I'm pretty stable. It's just that real weird watching thing. I don't like to see that on TV. I don't mind the sort of the over the top, unrealistic stuff. But if I see something like it's a plausible, they could get you really hurt. I just. Yeah. It doesn't even bother me to watch. It's just I just get that visceral response for just a brief second. And that's about it.
I totally understand. And and was it were you doing strongman before the military, or that kind of happened after the military?
That was after.
Take us through that.
Yes. So I mean, I guess so I started training lifting weights when I was about 13, 14 years of age, and I've been doing it now for 40 years. I did a little bit of powerlifting in college. Then I transitioned into rugby for about 7 years or so. Then I went back into powerlifting, and I set some national records as a powerlifter, as a drug-free powerlifter. I deadlifted 350 kilos. Which back in the day was a pretty respectable deadlift. I mean, now these guys are doing a bit more than that. But
yeah, it's nothing now. It's nothing now. It's
still a decent amount. But I mean, But I've never been a drug guy. I've never taken drugs. I don't take testosterone. I know people accuse me of that, but that's never been the case. Then I think after that, when I got into my mid-30s-ish, I took up strongman competitions and really thoroughly enjoyed the training. I liked lifting the Atlas stones and pulling the trucks, and I would go into the parking lots and string 2 or 3 cars together and pull those with harness. And I'd seek out semi trucks and go and ask if I could pull their trucks, and it's kind of weird, bizarre stuff. And but I realized that and I was probably 280. So I was probably, close to 130 kilos at that time. Big guy, 6'5". But even then at that size, and I competed, this is when strongman in the United States was still really started becoming organized. And they had the first ever national championships, which was run by a guy named Bill Holland. Yeah. And I competed and I took 5th. in the like 300-pound class, I think, or whatever it was. I was like
Wow.
280. And so I did reasonably well, but I realized that to be really successful, probably I would have to take drugs, and I just didn't want to have any part of that. So I decided that while I enjoyed, and I still do some of the strongman type of training, I think it can be excellent conditioning stuff. You guys see me sometimes on Instagram, I'm loading these 200-pound medicine balls for reps, and that's still good training. I like that. And I appreciate a lot of the strongman stuff, but I was never going to, unless I got up to 330, 340 pounds, and I would probably need to take drugs to do that. I was never going to be like a top level guy. And I kind of like wanted to do sports where I could be top level at. And so I went from strongman. I think after that, I continued to compete in powerlifting off and on. I did lift at 700 pounds up until I was age 44 was the last time I did that. The last time I really cared to train that heavy.
Yeah.
I got into throwing stuff, Highland Games. So you may be familiar with it.
Really?
Yeah, I was a world champion Highland Games athlete as a master.
The
caber, the caber and the
caber tossing.
Right, caber tossing and weights and throwing, 56-pound weights and hammers and all that stuff. So I did that. I did that for about 5 or 6 years. I won one world championship and took like second, third in a bunch of them, and set one world record in that. And then my most recent thing was rowing, where I started doing this, this Concept 2 rowing competition, which is, there's a world of people that do this, and I ended up breaking 3 of the world records on that as well.
And age group records, or
age group records, and then American records, like 6 American records and 3 world records. And when I broke the age group for the 50+ record, I actually was faster than the 20+ record in the U.S. I'd beaten guys that were many years, decades younger than me, even as a.
How the fuck do you go from strongman kind of strength and that lack of, I guess, endurance to an endurance sport? Like, how do you train your system?
To be fair, some of the rowing I was doing was more of a sprint-based rowing, so it still required quite a bit of strength.
Yeah.
But it was just training it. I got with an Olympic gold medalist who was a rower who happened to live near me, and I got him to train me for a little bit. He kind of set me right on technique, and I just grinded. I just get in there and do what it takes. And right now I'm going through another evolution where you see I'm leaning out. I'm gearing up to do this CrossFit stuff, which is I'm not really built for. I'm too tall for it, quite honestly. But in my mind, I think I can compete, and I compete at a high level. And so
CrossFit Games, you going?
Yeah, exactly. CrossFit. So I'm targeting, when I turn 55 as the next age group. So I think it'll take me about 2 years of doing the work, learning the skills, doing that stuff. I don't mind doing the work, and I think the conditioning will be my conditioning is already pretty darn good. It's just developing the functional patterns, movement patterns, and the skill acquisition. It's going to take me about 2 years to get to that. And I think I honestly think I can compete. I've been successful at a high level at pretty much every sport I've taken up. So I don't see why this is any different, although I do have some disadvantages.
Oh, there you go again, Shawn. You fucked me up again, mate. You're putting fire in the belly here, and I'm an ex-athlete as well. I'm just like, shit, there's another, there's some more stuff to go after, and I love that. And I'm backing you all the way, mate. I love the fact that you're going after these goals, and rather than just, to compete for the sake of competition, it's like, no, what do I got to do to be number one in this thing? And
that's my goal. And if I get there, I get there. If I don't, I don't, but I'm sure as hell going to try. And then, it may be that I find out a year in it that it's never going to happen. And then you switch sports. But and that's what's kept it fresh for me is every 5-7 years, you kind of peak, and you're like, I'm not going to get much better. Yeah. Or if I am going to get better, it's going to take an incredible amount. Because once you break a world record, to improve that by just even a fraction, 1% takes an incredible amount of work. Yeah. To move that relative to what it took you to get there in the first place. And so it's kind of like you get to a point where it's like, I'm bored. I'm tired. There's a lot of fun in sucking at something and then getting good at it. You just see this progress. It's like, for me, pull-ups. I've got these super long arms. I'm heavy, and pull-ups were something that I really struggled with. And I just started cranking them out. And now I'm Now I don't suck at them. I'm okay at them now.
No, I don't
And then
suck.
hopefully at some point I'll be actually be good at them. But I mean, like I said, I've got a lot of weak areas. And one thing I like about CrossFit is, I've got weak areas that I can work on and I can get better. I may not be the best at those particular areas. There will be things that I will probably be the best at. Like if I get into a rowing competition at CrossFit, having been a world record holder, I will probably be the best at that during that competition.
Yeah, it's called the law of diminishing returns. The more
Right,
you
sure.
put in. Yeah. So do you personally, do you have to have these, there's two types of goals. There's an achievement goal and a habit goal. Do you feel that you've got to have an achievement goal to go after to keep you on the ball, to keep you alive, to keep you driven versus, I'm 50, whatever, and I'm just going to build this into my life and I'm happy with just having these habits. But do you have to, the opposite of that, you have to have something to be working towards?
I mean, I'm intrinsically motivated to train, to exercise. I think there's just general functional things that are important. But having said that, and I've gone a couple of years without competing, and I miss it. And I remember when I did the World Championships in rowing last year and I won. I hadn't competed in like 3 or 4 years. And I was like, I just haven't competed. I've been training, and I really enjoyed having a target, a goal to look for. So well, I don't think it's necessary for me to continue to do what I do. I'm always going to take care of my health and train.
Yeah.
I find having goals and having competition to be, better for me.
Yeah. Love it. What's like a, I run around the world as the bucket list guy, and I'm always talking about bucket lists with people. And what's a big, a couple of big bucket list items that you've got in terms of challenges for yourself that are like maybe way fucking far off in the distance that you want to go after? Do you have any in mind?
Well, I mean, obviously, like I said, I'm looking at 2 years down the road at 55, going to these CrossFit games, and hopefully winning the damn things. I mean, that's a bucket list item. I've like I said, I've been able to go to World Championships, win those, set world records, and so things. So those things are always sort of in the back of my mind. There's lots of records I can set. I mean, I'm still looking at the rowing records and some of the distances. Now that I'm leaning out, I can probably attack some of the longer distance records and maybe setting some records there. Travel. I mean, honestly, my sort of reason, of existence at this point is to hopefully inspire and change and cause a significant change in the landscape, in the cultural, social landscape, and how we approach health, fitness. The healthcare industry has devolved into a health maintenance, sort of not even a health maintenance, it's a disease maintenance industry. All we're doing is kind of maintaining people's diseases with pills and potions and kind of, maybe prolonging their life, but their life is not high quality. And so I think that is my biggest goal. If I can, grow what I'm building to reach millions of people, which I do think it's possible. Yeah. And I feel like I'm, sort of hopelessly driven to make that happen. I mean, I don't think I have a choice in this matter. No. That will be the biggest accomplishment that I think I can contribute to, society in general. And so that's my bucket list thing. And now there's gonna be small things that'll come up. And you want to go see different parts of the world and do things and partake in things. And I was kind of bummed because I've been out of Peru twice. Once as a medical missionary, I was down there operating on little kids, kind of helping them with orthopedic deformities and stuff like that. And we were supposed to tour around, and it was a real rainy season in Machu Picchu, which is that beautiful site that the Incas had built that everybody likes to go to and make a pilgrimage and climb. I didn't get to do it that time. Then we flew down another time, and we got to Lima, Peru, and with the intention of going to Machu Picchu. We'd had everything booked. We did all scheduled, and we had a family emergency, and literally had to get off the plane, turn around, and take the next plane right back home. So, I mean, that's something I'd like to get back to. I love to. I've not been to Australia. I live in New Zealand, but I've not been to down to your part of the world. So that's something I'd like to.
I'd love to put on an event. I'd love to speak at it. I reckon we can get between me and my mates down here. I reckon we could fill a few rooms for you. That's for sure.
Sure. Well, I mean, like I said, I'd love to go check it out and, you know, I
Yeah.
mean, try some of the lamb and some of the beef and,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, eat some of the food and hang out and, you know, go run around on the beach and, you know, that type of stuff and just hang out.
Just
Yeah.
tackling fucking farm animals just randomly and taking chunks out of them.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I know when I lived in New Zealand, there were sheep everywhere.
Oh,
I
yeah.
got, you know, it was kind of funny because I was, you know, as
That's a running joke between us Australians and New Zealanders. You're probably aware of that.
yeah,
About
yeah,
what we say about New Zealanders and their sheep. Very,
yeah,
very close.
they're nervous. Yeah. The
Definitely.
men and the sheep are nervous or something like that. They got the gumboots for whatever reason, you know, it's,
I love it.
but yeah, I mean, I had so much lamb in New Zealand. I mean, it was like, you know, it was, and I don't, you know, I'm not complaining, but I mean, I literally, because everybody would like, as the American, I would get invited to dinner and people would cook for me in their homes, which was wonderful, but it was always the same thing. It was roast lamb and something called kumara, which I don't know if you know what
Yeah,
kumara
yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That was a meal. It was, I must have had that meal 100 times when I was there and
yeah.
I enjoyed it, but I kind of got put off lamb for some reason for a period of time, and now I appreciate it again. I was in Iceland a couple of years ago, and they had some just phenomenal lamb as well. I think, you know, New Zealand,
In Iceland.
Iceland that makes very good lamb. Yeah, it's surprising.
Shit, there you go. Oh wow. What is your favorite meat?
I still think beef is my favorite meat for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, you know, I think you know, and I definitely like the fattier cuts of meat. You know,
Mm,
ribeye steak, brisket, short ribs.
mm.
I've had some skirt steak the other night. It was just delicious. You know, this is what we often make fajita meat out of, and so
Yeah.
and it depends how it's prepared. And I like them all, man. I got to tell you, man. The more I do this, the more I enjoy. I
Yeah.
appreciate it all. But, and I go through phases, like I said, where I eat leaner, eat fattier, and I like them all, quite honestly.
And do you go to a special? Do you get your stuff from a butcher? You know, like a special butcher who gets you some good cuts? Or
I do a little of both. I mean, you know, as I became kind of this meat guru guy, I got a lot of ranchers and people, they just literally send me meat, which is not a bad situation being in life. And so I'll have a lot of farmers and ranchers. Hey, would you like to try I'm like, yeah, twist my arm. Sure. I'll eat your,
yeah,
I'll eat your, you know, I'll eat your bison. I'll eat your, you know, your prime beef. And so I get some of that, you know, some I still buy from the store. But you know, it's mostly a mix of that. You know, it just, uh, you know, I try to support these guys, these independent
yeah,
ranchers, because I think that is
yeah,
a problem with the meat supply system. I think we've unfortunately gone to this at least in the U.S., we've got this huge centralized system, and it's problematic. I think
yeah,
there's
yeah.
more problems coming down the road from that, and I think we have to get back to you know, the direct ranch to table type stuff. I think that's important. I think we need to support those guys that are out there doing the hard work every day. I know in Australia, you guys appreciate your farmers and ranchers,
Very, yeah.
although we see a lot of the vegan activists that are terrorizing these guys or trying to, which is absolutely bizarre. And I know Melbourne in particular seems to be kind of a vegan central for activism, at least from what I get filtered through to me.
Yeah, there's you know, I've got to tread carefully when we're putting this out there, and you know,
Yeah.
yeah, and the funny thing about it is I never thought, you know, in what you do and the example that you've set, and being the so-called meat guru has certainly simplified our life, and it's been absolutely amazing. But it is extreme. What do you say to people that say, you know, meat only? That's extreme. You know, how do I tiptoe into that? How do I adapt to it and go from where I am to into that? You know, what's your
I mean, why do you do it? I mean, the question is, why would you want to do it? I mean, and there's people with legitimate medical issues that it does help, and it does help. And I think that, you know, what we consider extreme just reflects our culture. I mean, you know, there are a lot of cultures in the world where a meat only diet, and they're saying that was Tuesday. I mean, it was normal for them. I mean, you look at places like, you know, rural Mongolia, you look at some of the, you know, the northern Scandinavian, you know, the Sami and some of the other, you know, Nenes and some of these other people that's been their whole course of life for millennia. And, you know, I mean, when we look from an evolutionary perspective, or even a historical perspective, this sort of belief in this balanced diet and the eat the rainbow, I mean, many of these foods would never have been available to you or I. They don't even grow on the same continent. And how you could make that diet, this balanced diet that we're somehow supposed to eat, it just would not have even been a possibility in human existence. And many times, as humans migrated across the world and they lived in cold climates, and we spend much of our time in the ice ages. I mean, most of humanity was spent in the ice ages. Most people maybe don't realize this. The last 10, 15,000 years have been a weird interglacial warm period where we have all this abundance of fruits and vegetables and crops, but that was not the majority of the planet time on Earth for Homo sapiens and even other human beings. And so when we say what was a normal human diet, I would say probably a mono diet or a very limited menu diet. Certainly we would have eaten fruit when it was available. We were opportunistic omnivores. I don't discount that at all, but I just don't think we had that much opportunity, most of the time. And if you look at it from a foraging standpoint, how would you achieve calorie sufficiency, food sufficiency? Well, the easiest way is just to get a big friggin' animal, big mammoth.
And they're always available too. Like fruits and vegetables are seasonal.
Right. And the mammoths, and again, the megafaunal animals, which we had in our evolutionary past, were ubiquitous. I mean, they were all over the place. We could kill them very easily. It's been very easily demonstrated, even going back to Homo erectus, they killed elephants with ease.
Yeah.
So they had all this food supply. That is one of the reasons, and this constant food supply is one of the reasons we were able to develop this huge brain, because we had this huge amount of energy, and we were able to shrink our guts from what other primates currently have. And so this is an evolutionary adaptation that caused us to become humans and eventually Homo sapiens. So that's our diet, in my view. And I think the rest of the stuff is now, variety that we didn't really have access to the degree we have now. So it's not that unusual. It's just weird in modern society, though. It really is, because you've got access to everything. I mean, why would you just choose one thing? You can choose all these other things. Well, the problem is most of the food in the grocery store, and I'm not necessarily talking about Whole Foods, but most of the packaged stuff, what is it? You guys are having a run on Tim Tams now there in Australia.
Hey, whoa! Watch yourself there.
I know it's sort of
you don't even know, like the double coated Tim Tam. And I've got to admit this too. We're good on this carnivore diet, and I'm leading into the sugar cravings and trying to decrease sugar trade. But you've just
blasphemy.
It's the fucking last. It's honestly, man, it's the last thing. The double coated Tim Tams are my vice. That is like, how do I? It's that and the bit of sugar in my coffee.
Yeah. Right.
And
I've had Tim Tams before. They're good. I mean, I know they're good. The thing is, I mean, here's the deal. I mean, with a carnivore diet, with being on it, it's really, I mean, there are a lot of people that are really, literally addicted to sugar and sugary foods, and desserts and sweets, chocolates, biscuits, whatever you want to call them, cakes, and really it's like you have to go through this detox process. I would say, it's I would never say detox, but I'm saying a withdrawal process. It's like getting a heroin addict off of heroin and telling them, well, you can have a little bit once a week and you're okay. That never works. So for a lot of people, it's not that I could never eat a piece of chocolate cake or have a Tim Tam or something or a smell. I don't approach it like that. If I want to have one, I will have it. I don't care. I just choose not to. I had a piece of cake on May 4th. I had a piece of cake. This was a birthday party that someone who's been with us for a year had, and I said, I'm going to make an exception. I had it, and it was fine. It was no big deal. But it wasn't like I had to have it. I made that conscious decision. But to withdraw from this stuff and to get off it to where you no longer have to have it, where it's no longer a craving, a calling, and all-consuming in the back of your mind. I know it's in the cupboard. Eventually I'm going to give into it.
Yeah.
To get past that, to be able to no longer be subject to that is extremely liberating.
It is
freeing, because then you have such control over what you put in your mouth, and it's not out of boredom, it's not out of entertainment, it's not out of cultural pressure, it's not over what the guy on the TV or the internet's telling you. It's I eat because I want to eat, and I'm concerned about the nutrition. And I enjoy my food. It's not like I don't enjoy what I eat. I'm going to eat a feast here right after this podcast. I'm going to go eat. I'm going to cook up several pounds of meat, and it's going to be delicious. And I'm going to
what's on the agenda tonight?
So I'm probably going to have around what is it? About 2 kilos of some sort of steak and fish. Basically, is what's going to be
2 kilograms. 2 kilograms. And what's the relationship? So I've got so many questions still. What's the relationship between having the big feast and the fasting?
Well, I think, at this stage of the game for me, it assists in becoming leaner. I think that period of time without food is when you're obviously utilizing, you're stimulating autophagy, and some of these other things are beneficial. It probably leads to me eating actually less, even though I'm eating 2 kilograms. It's probably, if I were to eat 3 meals a day, I would probably eat 2.5 kilograms. So I'm probably eating a little bit less as well. Yeah. So I think there's a caloric restriction that's occurring, a relative caloric reduction. There is, obviously eating a higher protein approach. Protein is metabolically favorable. It's challenging to turn protein into fat metabolically. It provides a little calorie buffer where you can eat actually more. And so I think, it's not only just a one feast, but it's what you're feasting on. And it's also, I do pretty well in a fasted state with regard to training for most things. For most of the stuff I train, and you see what kind of training I do, even the intense, hard aerobic stuff, I do pretty well fasted. So, it kind of works out with my schedule right now. And again, you mentioned earlier, I am pretty darn busy. And so it's, for me to take the time to eat 3-4 times a day, I might not have time to do it. So I'd rather just to spend an hour, just cook, eat, clean, and be done. Pretty well, yeah.
Real quick, the benefits of, the benefits of fasting, in your view, what are they?
Well, I think it depends on the person.
It's very individual, of course.
It depends on the person's situation. I think for metabolically ill people or really obese people, probably more benefit there. I think for the athlete, maybe short periods of, I wouldn't say long fasts are all that beneficial. I think, the less frequent meal patterns are helpful, unless your goal is to put on as much muscle mass as possible. And probably more frequent meal patterns makes more sense with high protein food. Yeah. I think, one, it can aid in performance. There can be a cognitive benefit. I think there are perhaps some benefits when it comes to inflammation that's occurring for some people. A lot of people it can help with gastrointestinal issues. There's a lot of literature on fasting now where it shows, particularly with like diabetic pathophysiology, where it lowers insulin, improves glycemic control. It does seem to help with weight loss, depending on how it's regimented. It can lead to less food consumption in general, which for many people is a good idea. Yeah. Many people just eat too damn much. That's part of it. Sometimes there's a lot of it. They're eating the wrong things too, and those things have differential effects on a lot of metabolic processes and hormone production and function and just general health and our tissue health, our cellular health. Is related to what we eat for sure.
And real briefly too, from a medical standpoint, what is ketosis for those that don't know?
Well, there's something called nutritional ketosis, and I think that's important to put that little adjective in front of the word. Nutritional ketosis is defined as when ketones appear in the blood in a concentration of 0.5 millimolar. And this was sort of put out there by guys like Steve Finney and Jeff Volek. Kind of defining nutritional ketosis. And that is just, so there are 3 major, outside of alcohol. Alcohol technically is a fuel. But glucose or sugars, free fatty acids and ketones are fuel sources. And we run on a blend. We always have some blend of that. And then sometimes we have alcohol in the system. And, they're prioritized differently. We tend to utilize alcohol right away because it's toxic. We want to get rid of it. Glucose we use pretty regularly, and ketones as well. And there's certain tissues in our body that run very well on just ketones. Our brain does well on ketones. It has a little bit of glucose with it. There are some cells in our body that are 100% glucose dependent. That like certain like red blood cells and there's a few others, renal medulla and a few other places where that's the case.
Yeah.
But ketones often represent the fact, and they usually occur from breakdown of fat. So when we undergo lipolysis, when our insulin levels are low enough and glucagon is permissible, we break down fat and we produce ketones, and then we utilize those and turn as energy. Some people waste them, particularly early on, so you excrete them, you breathe them off, you urinate them out, you sweat them out.
Yeah.
And so you can actually lose energy that way, which can sometimes lead to weight loss. It's like just getting rid of energy, which is kind of neat. But ketones have a lot of they have a lot of impacts on the body. There's a lot of things they do that are potentially beneficial. So it's just another fuel source. It's another one of our ways we fuel our cellular needs.
Yeah, love it. And the real counterintuitive thing has struck me in the carnivore diet, and we're only fresh into it, is the fact that we're embracing fat on meat. We're eating it, and we're not cutting it off like we used to. What's the deal there?
Well, when you are looking at energy, if you don't have carbohydrates, you got to get your energy from somewhere. Now, you can convert protein into glucose via gluconeogenesis, but it's a clunky process. I wouldn't say it's a clunky process. It's just less efficient, and so you have to get energy from somewhere. So you can use fat. I mean, fat is our most abundant energy source. That is why we have body fat. Yeah. Because we're designed to use that. It's a lightweight, portable, way to carry energy around. That's why humans are the fattest primates. If you look at other primate animals, we are the fattest because we need fat to fuel our brain, to make sure we do it. That's why human infants tend to be fatter. They're chubby little babies because they're growing. They have a lot of fat, a lot of high energy needs. As they're growing that brain, they need a lot of fat. So when you don't have carbohydrate, you got to get your energy from somewhere. So fat becomes the amount. And, if we look at what are the essential requirements to run a human being, there are, vitamins and minerals and essential amino acids and essential fats. Those are the only things you need to make humans run. There are no such thing as essential carbohydrates. There's no such thing as essential fiber. There's no such thing as essential phytonutrients. Those things are conditionally beneficial in certain situations for certain people and depending on what your background diet is. But really, if you're on a meat-based diet, you need to eat some fat. You need to eat some of it. You may not need to gorge on it like some people will advocate, where you eat just tons and tons of fat. But some people thrive on that technique. And so, I mean, there's a range of fat you need, and it's not zero. It's a decent amount. It's more than you think. And probably it's, for the average person, 50% or more of their calories need to come from fat, maybe as high as 70 to 80% for that type of situation.
Yeah. And now on that too is, and you get asked this all the time, cholesterol, heart disease, and the fact that you're creating possibly an acidic environment. How do you respond to that? When you're going carnivore?
Well, I think we have to realize that our understanding, most of us in the sort of general population, and certainly many of our doctors still, is really, really way behind the times. I mean, we're still quoting 50-year-old dogma, which has just been completely shown to be far, far nuanced, if anything. I mean, at the very least, you can say it's more nuanced. And so it's not just cholesterol, it's what type of cholesterol. It's not just saturated fat, it's what type of saturated fat. I mean, there are many types of saturated fat. There's palmitate, oleic acid, butyric acid, medium chain, long chain, short chain fatty acids. So there's a lot more differential, than just all saturated fat is bad. Yeah. There are a lot of things that affect our cardiovascular health, and only one of them is cholesterol. There are literally dozens of things that are out there. So we have to look at the whole picture, the whole risk profile. Are you obese? Do you have visceral fat? Do you have chronic inflammation? Do you have damaged vascular epithelium? Do you have poor glycemic control? Yeah. All of these things will have a role on ultimately what shows up in disease. And cholesterol is in there, but it's only one of them. And we are seeing more and more data and more examples of people that are saying, look, my cholesterol is high, but every other metabolic marker is low. And guess what? I have no cardiovascular disease. I can check that. I can do imaging. I can image my neck blood vessels. I can image my heart. And guess what? Despite having high cholesterol for many, many years, I have no heart disease. I have no evidence of that. And I think we're seeing that there's nuance. Most people, eating the standard UK diet, the standard Australian diet, standard American diet, the standard crap diet, are going to have visceral fat. They're going to have chronic inflammation. They're going to have prediabetes or hyperinsulinemia. And then when you put hypercholesterol, high cholesterol in that situation, that's probably not the best idea. But if you can get out of that situation and change your environment, then we're talking different things. And we see that cholesterol, as we get older and older, can be protective. There's plenty of, again, I don't like to use a lot of these epidemiologic associational studies because they never can show causation, but we do see these associations where people, as they get older and older, the more cholesterol they have, the less likely they are to die of all diseases, including heart disease in some cases, cancer, dementia, so on and so forth.
Is there much research being done, has been done or is being done on the carnivore diet?
Well, historically, there's been a few cases. There was some back, almost 100 years ago or 90 years ago that there was done. A number of peer-reviewed studies were done on a couple individuals that embarked on a one-year carnivore diet. There's been case reports that have been done. There's a few, sort of scattered, cases throughout history where they've looked at that. Almost all of those, by the way, have been favorable. I mean, it's hard to find a report showing where they actually did a zero-carb diet where the outcome was negative. But fortunately, we now have Harvard University is in process of actually doing a large study on carnivore right now, which is just, it's just finishing its data collection period right now. So we'll probably have something later this year in publication on a really large carnivore study looking at the population, at least as a start. And then we'll see hopefully more and more case reports, and then hopefully some interventional trials looking at this. But it is starting to trickle upwards into the academic circles. So this movement, this growth of this carnivore community is definitely making waves. So it's good.
And look, and on that, and then wrapping up too, Shawn, because I know you'll be getting hungry by now, and I hate to stand in the way of you and your meat.
That's okay. So, I could literally go for, I'm fine. I can eat whatever, but I kind of set in my mind that I was going to eat. So it's kind of one of those, goals.
Yeah. One of the things that I've loved is embracing fasting more and going, fasting is good, and I'm okay with being hungry because, the inflammation and et cetera, the things that you mentioned before. I've never done anything like this before. Embracing it, going down to 2 meals a day, and just because, and we just eat when we want to eat. It's not like we do 3 square meals a day or eat like the bodybuilder, 5 meals like I was. But having more, having only one thing on the plate in terms of a big piece of meat is quite confronting. And even we're putting on some of our steaks, just put something green on the top just to emotionally feel better about ourselves at the start. It's quite interesting. But the relationship of what you said about having fat and it's having a big effect on sugar cravings and definitely clarity, like I said before. So again, thank you for that. I'm talking about community. You're developing a big community. How can people get involved in your world, mate? And I know you've got a few ways that people can connect with you. What are they?
Sure. Yeah. So that you're talking about MeatRx. MeatRx is like meat with a prescription after it. So meatrx.com. And so it's a community. It's an online community. It's video chat. I mean, there's hundreds of people. There's hundreds and hundreds of support meetings going on to help people transition to diet. It's a resource. We have over 8,000 scientific articles collected, one of the largest research libraries in the world, promoting what's healthy about meat and some of the other topics. What about saturated fat and cholesterol and heart disease and all these things? You have a question, all the studies that support what I'm doing. We have a huge environmental impact. What about meat in the environment? Well, what about all the studies that have been done that show how animal agriculture can positively improve the environment, and debunking some of the nonsense that's coming out from the vegan camps? We have recipes. We have The other thing we're very proud of is we have a coaching program where we have people that are actually coaching people on fasting and carnivore, and we'll be doing other things down in the future. Very, very affordable. We're keeping the price extremely low, accessible, supporting, because some people, you can give them the information, but they just need a little more support and accountability. So we have that. We have, discounts on meat. We're finding ranchers that are willing to participate. So we're getting people, and some of it's international. We've got places from the whole world, but a lot over the U.S. where ranchers will say, these are ranchers that are doing it the right way or regeneratively, or these ranchers will sell direct to consumer. And oh, by the way, you can get discounts with these guys. And so we're just trying to make it a one-stop shop for everything. We got an FAQ, how to start the diet. Like I said, we've got videos, we've got guides on how to do it, meal plans. I mean, everything you could possibly need to get started in this stuff is there, and we're growing all the time. And it's been well received, and the people that, particularly people in the community, love it. I mean, they really enjoy the support. They look forward. I do a meeting every single day, at 9 a.m. Pacific time, which may be inconvenient for you guys, but I mean, I have an Australian gal that shows up every month. It's like 2 a.m. for her. I don't know. She's just up 2 a.m. doing her meeting, but I mean, we have meetings all the time. We have expert community guests come in there, and we talk about topics, and you get to ask them, like, the scientific experts from the world. I'll interview them and allow the people in there to ask their questions too, so they can get that information. The Q&A's done. And,
love it. You get that information from the source rather than
right, exactly.
Insta experts.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, cool. Hey, mate, thanks so much, and I'll put all your details in the show notes as well, and where people can connect with you. Dr. Shawn Baker, thanks so much for your time, buddy, and I can't wait to get you down here. And I tell you what, when you come down under, when we're allowed to fly again, come down here, and we've got to have a steak dinner together. That's what we're going to do.
I'm already hungry, looking forward. All right, Trev, thank you so much, man.
All right, buddy.
All right, I'll see you later. Okay, bye-bye.